The text came while I was elbow deep in the engine of my '98 Mustang, trying to coax another year out of a car that should have been scrapped during the Clinton administration. The notification chimed through the greasy speakers of my phone, and I almost ignored it. Almost. But something about the timing felt wrong. Jenna was supposed to be at her law firm's quarterly review meeting, the kind of corporate theater that kept her out until midnight with catered sushi and PowerPoint presentations about billable hours. She never texted during those marathon sessions. I wiped my hands on an oil-stained rag and picked up the phone. The sender wasn't Jenna. It was Maya Mercer. Maya was Theo's wife, and Theo had been my best friend since we were roommates at State 15 years ago. Maya and I barely exchanged pleasantries at dinner parties, let alone late-night text messages. The preview showed an image attachment with no words. I opened it. The photo showed a bedroom floor I didn't recognize. Hardwood, expensive-looking, with a view of downtown Edgewater's skyline through floor-to-ceiling windows. Scattered across that pristine floor were clothes, a man's shirt, designer jeans, and there, draped over a leather chair like some kind of twisted trophy, was a red lace bra I'd bought for Jenna last Valentine's Day. I stared at that image for a full minute, my brain trying to process what I was seeing. The bra was distinctive, imported, ridiculously expensive, with a little bow detail that the saleswoman had assured me was très sophistiqué. I'd joked to Jenna that it cost more per square inch than my car. My phone buzzed again. This time, Maya had included a message. "You might want to see this." I recognized the room now. Theo's condo on Harbor Drive, the one he'd bought after his startup got acquired by some Silicon Valley giant. I'd helped him move in 2 years ago, hauling boxes up 37 flights because the freight elevator was broken. I remembered that skyline view, the signed Red Sox jersey hanging on the wall, the leather furniture that cost more than I made in 3 months, my wife's bra, my best friend's bedroom. The math wasn't complicated. I set the phone down carefully, like it might explode if I handled it too roughly. My hands were shaking, and not from the October cold seeping through the garage door. I walked to my workbench and gripped the edge until my knuckles went white. "Well," I said to the empty garage, "that's new." The rationale part of my brain started cataloging evidence. Jenna had been working late more often lately. She'd bought new perfume, started going to yoga classes that seemed to happen at odd hours. Her phone had acquired a password sometime in August. When I'd asked about it, she'd laughed and said something about client confidentiality. I should have known then. But you don't expect your wife to cheat with your best friend. It's such a cliche that it feels impossible, like getting struck by lightning while winning the lottery. I picked up my phone and scrolled through my recent calls with Theo. Just last week, he'd invited me to play basketball at the gym. We'd grabbed beers afterward, and he'd asked about Jenna, how she was handling the stress of making partner at her firm. He'd seemed genuinely concerned, like a good friend should be. The performance must have been exhausting. My phone rang. Jenna's name flashed on the screen, and for a moment I considered answering. Playing dumb, pretending I hadn't seen Maya's little care package. But I wasn't ready for that conversation yet. I needed time to think, to plan, to figure out exactly how I wanted to handle this. I let it go to voicemail. The garage felt smaller suddenly, like the walls were closing in. I needed air, space to process what I'd learned. I grabbed my jacket and headed for the door, but stopped when I caught sight of myself in the reflection of my Mustang's windshield. I looked exactly like what I was, a 38-year-old IT support technician whose wife was cheating on him with his best friend. Thinning hair, 5 o'clock shadow, work shirt with my name embroidered over the pocket like I was some kind of mechanic. The uniform of the professionally invisible, but appearances could be deceiving. I'd learned that much working in corporate IT for the past decade. Everyone assumed the tech guy was harmless, forgettable, maybe a little slow. They said things around me they'd never say to each other. They left their computers unlocked, their passwords written on sticky notes, their private lives scattered across hard drives like digital confessions. People underestimated me. That was their mistake. I walked to Bean's Bar, a dive 3 blocks from my house that served as Edgewater's unofficial headquarters for the professionally disappointed. The owner, a former longshoreman everyone called Beans, had known me since high school. He poured drinks and minded his own business, which made his establishment perfect for thinking. "You look like someone shot your dog," Beans said when I slid onto my usual stool. "Something like that," I said. "Whiskey, the cheap stuff." He poured 2 fingers of bourbon that probably came from a plastic jug and set it in front of me. The bar was mostly empty except for a couple of regulars watching a hockey game on the ancient television mounted above the liquor bottles. I sipped the whiskey and thought about Maya. Why had she sent me that photo? She and Theo seemed happy enough, at least from the outside. They'd been married 8 years, had a nice house in the suburbs, took vacation photos that made everyone else feel inadequate about their lives. Unless she'd found out about the affair and decided I deserved to know. That would make sense. Misery loves company, and there's nothing quite like discovering your spouse is cheating to make you want to share the wealth. Or maybe she was tired of covering for them. Maybe she'd been watching Jenna and Theo sneak around for months, and the secret was eating her alive. I pulled out my phone and looked at the photo again. The timestamp showed it was taken this afternoon, around 2 o'clock, right when Jenna was supposed to be in her quarterly review meeting. I opened my laptop tracking app, the one Jenna and I used to share locations for safety. Her phone showed her at the law firm downtown, exactly where she'd said she'd be. Except I was looking at photographic evidence that she was actually 20 blocks away, in Theo's bedroom, apparently without her bra. She'd spoofed her location somehow. That took planning, technical knowledge, and a level of deception that was honestly impressive. My wife, the corporate lawyer, had gone full covert ops to hide her affair. I had to admire the thoroughness. The whiskey was starting to work its magic, dulling the sharp edge of betrayal and replacing it with something colder, more calculating. I'd spent 15 years in IT learning how people really operated when they thought no one was watching. I knew about deleted browser histories and private email accounts and the little digital breadcrumbs people left behind when they thought they were being clever. If Jenna and Theo wanted to play games, I could play too. But I played to win. I finished my drink and walked home, my mind already working through possibilities. The house felt different when I walked in, like I was seeing it through new eyes. This was where Jenna came home after spending afternoons with my best friend. This was where she looked me in the eye and asked about my day while her clothes still carried the scent of another man. The performance was impressive, but the run was about to end. I went to my home office and fired up my computer. If you want to catch cheaters in the digital age, you need to think like a detective, and detectives start with what they can prove. I pulled up our cell phone account and started scrolling through location data. Jenna's phone had been pinging off the tower near Theo's building regularly for the past 3 months. Not every day, but often enough to establish a pattern. Tuesday and Thursday afternoons mostly, with a few weekend visits thrown in for variety. Our credit card statements told an interesting story too. Charges at a boutique hotel downtown, always on days when Jenna claimed to be working late, a lingerie store I'd never heard of, restaurants that specialized in intimate dinners for two. And then there were the calls. Jenna had been careful about her phone records, but she'd forgotten about our landline. Theo's number appeared 17 times in the past month, always during business hours when I was at work. I printed everything and organized it in a folder, evidence, documentation, the kind of thorough record-keeping that would make any lawyer proud. By the time Jenna came home at 11:30, I had a complete picture of her affair. Dates, times, locations, expenses. A timeline that read like a prosecution's wet dream. "Hey, honey," she said, dropping her briefcase by the door. "Sorry I'm so late. The meeting ran forever, and then we had to grab dinner to finish the quarterly projections." She kissed my cheek, and I smelled cologne that wasn't mine. Expensive stuff, the kind Theo favored. "How'd it go?" I asked. "Oh, you know how these things are. Lots of corporate speak and PowerPoint slides. I think I might have impressed the partners, though. There's talk about fast-tracking my promotion." She was good, relaxed, natural, with just enough detail to seem believable. If I hadn't seen that photo, I might have bought the whole performance. "That's great," I said. "You deserve it." She smiled and headed upstairs to shower. I listened to the water running and wondered how many times she'd done exactly this. Come home from Theo's bed and washed away the evidence before climbing into mine. My phone buzzed. A text from Maya. "We need to talk." I typed back, "When?" "Tomorrow, coffee shop on 5th Street, 10 a.m. I deleted the conversation and went to bed. Jenna was already asleep, or pretending to be. In the darkness, I could hear her breathing, steady and peaceful. The sleep of someone with a clear conscience, or someone who'd gotten very good at compartmentalizing. I lay awake until dawn, staring at the ceiling and planning my next move. The coffee shop on 5th Street was one of those aggressively hip places that served drinks with names like Enlightenment Blend and charged $8 for what used to be called coffee. Maya was already there when I arrived, sitting in a corner booth with her hands wrapped around a ceramic mug like she was trying to draw warmth from it. She looked different than I remembered from dinner parties and social gatherings. Smaller somehow, with dark circles under her eyes and the kind of tired that sleep doesn't fix. Her blonde hair was pulled back in a ponytail, and she wore jeans and a sweater instead of her usual designer outfits. "Thank you for coming," she said when I slid into the seat across from her. "Thank you for the photo," I said, "though I'm curious why you sent it." She laughed, but there was no humor in it. Because I'm tired of being the only one who knows. Because I'm tired of watching them think they're so clever. Because I figured you deserved to know what your wife and my husband do on Tuesday and Thursday afternoons. I ordered coffee from a barista with more piercings than a tackle box and waited for Maya to continue. How long have you known? I asked. 3 months, she said. Maybe longer. I started suspecting when Theo began working late all the time, taking meetings that weren't on his calendar. Then I found hotel receipts in his jacket pocket. When I asked him about them, he said they were for client dinners. But you didn't believe him. Would you? She pulled out her phone and showed me a photo. Theo and Jenna at a restaurant downtown, sitting close together, his hand on her thigh. I hired a private investigator, got tired of wondering. The investigator had been thorough. Maya showed me photos spanning weeks, Theo and Jenna entering his condo building, leaving together the next morning, meeting at hotels, restaurants, even a weekend trip to Boston that Jenna had told me was a legal conference. Why didn't you confront them? I asked. Same reason you haven't, she said, because I wanted to be smart about it, because I wanted to make sure I had everything documented before I made my move. I sipped my overpriced coffee and studied Maya's face. She was angry, but it was a cold anger, calculated, the kind that plans ahead instead of exploding in the moment. What do you want from me? I asked. Partnership, she said. They've been playing us both for fools. I think it's time we returned the favor. She laid out her plan like a general briefing troops. Maya had been documenting everything for months. Photos, credit card statements, phone records, even recordings from a device she'd planted in Theo's car. She knew about hotel rooms and restaurant reservations and weekend trips disguised as business travel. But documentation was just the foundation. Maya wanted more than a divorce settlement. She wanted them to feel the same humiliation, the same sense of betrayal that we'd experienced. She wanted them to understand what it felt like to have your life turned upside down by someone you trusted. Theo's birthday party is next month, she said. 40 guests, catered dinner, open bar, all our friends, his business partners, people from the country club, everyone who matters in their professional and social circles. I was starting to see where this was going. You want to make it public? I said. I want to make it memorable, she said. I want them to remember this party for the rest of their lives, and I want everyone else to remember it too. Maya had thought through every detail. The guest list included people from both our social circles, plus Theo's business contacts and Jenna's colleagues from the law firm. She'd already arranged for a photographer, ostensibly to capture memories of Theo's 40th birthday. The plan was elegant in its simplicity. Let them think they'd gotten away with it. Let them relax, enjoy the party, bask in the attention of their friends and colleagues, and then, at the perfect moment, pull the rug out from under them in front of everyone who mattered in their lives. What about afterward? I asked. They'll know we worked together. So what? Maya shrugged. By then it won't matter. The damage will be done. Their reputations will be destroyed, their professional relationships will be in shambles, and everyone they know will have seen exactly what kind of people they really are. I had to admit, there was something appealing about the plan. Clean, public, and devastating. The kind of revenge that would follow them for years. I need time to think about it, I said. Of course, Maya said. But don't take too long. The party is in 6 weeks, and we'll need time to prepare. We exchanged phone numbers and agreed to meet again in a few days. As I walked back to my car, I found myself thinking about Jenna and Theo, probably planning their next rendezvous while their spouses sat in a coffee shop plotting their downfall. There was a certain poetic justice to it. That evening, Jenna came home early for once, carrying takeout from our favorite Thai restaurant. She'd changed into jeans and a sweater, and without her lawyer armor, she looked more like the woman I'd married 10 years ago. Thought we could have a quiet dinner, she said, unpacking containers of pad thai and green curry. Feel like we haven't talked in forever. We ate at the kitchen table, and Jenna told me about her day. A difficult client, a challenging case. Office politics that would make Machiavelli proud. She was animated, funny, the way she used to be before her career consumed everything else in her life. If I hadn't seen Maya's photos, I might have believed we were having a breakthrough, a return to better times. Instead, I watched my wife perform and marveled at how good she'd gotten at it. How's Theo doing? I asked casually. Haven't talked to him in a while. Oh, you know Theo, Jenna said. Always busy with some new project. Maya mentioned he's been working late a lot lately. The lie came so easily I almost missed it. Jenna knew exactly how Theo was doing, probably better than his wife did. But she delivered the deception with the same casual tone she used to discuss the weather. We should have them over for dinner soon, I said. That would be nice, Jenna agreed. It's been too long since we all got together. After dinner, we watched a movie on the couch, Jenna curled up against my side like we were still newlyweds. She fell asleep during the third act, and I listened to her breathe while credits rolled on a romantic comedy about second chances and true love. The irony wasn't lost on me. I carried her upstairs and tucked her into bed, then went to my office and opened the folder of evidence I'd compiled. Bank statements, phone records, location data, hotel receipts. The paper trail of a marriage falling apart. Maya's plan was tempting, but it felt too clean somehow. Too quick. Jenna and Theo had been playing their game for months, maybe longer. They'd had time to savor their deception, to enjoy the thrill of fooling their spouses. I wanted them to have time to savor their destruction too. I pulled out my laptop and started researching. Private investigators, surveillance equipment, public records. If Maya and I were going to do this, we needed to do it right, thoroughly, with the kind of attention to detail that would make their betrayal impossible to deny or explain away. My phone buzzed, a text from Theo. "Basketball tomorrow? Been too long since we played." I stared at the message for a long time, then typed back, "Sure. Usual time?" "Perfect. Looking forward to catching up." I deleted the conversation and went back to my research. If Theo wanted to catch up, I'd give him something to remember. The next morning, Jenna left early for a breakfast meeting with a client. I watched her drive away, then called in sick to work. I had more important things to do than fix computers and reset passwords. I drove to Theo's office building and parked across the street with a clear view of the entrance. Maya had given me his schedule, and according to her intelligence, he had a lunch meeting at noon that would keep him out of the office for at least 2 hours. At 11:45, Theo emerged from the building, checking his phone as he walked to his car. He looked successful, confident, like a man who had everything figured out. Designer suit, expensive watch, the kind of casual arrogance that came with money and status. He had no idea his world was about to collapse. I followed him to a restaurant downtown, staying far enough back to avoid detection. And through the window, I watched him meet with 2 men in suits, probably investors or business partners. They shook hands, ordered drinks, settled in for what looked like a lengthy discussion. I drove back to his office building and parked in the visitor lot. The security guard barely glanced at me as I walked through the lobby carrying a clipboard and wearing the kind of generic polo shirt that made people assume I belonged there. Theo's office was on the 15th floor, and his assistant was at lunch. I had maybe 30 minutes before someone might notice I wasn't supposed to be there. I didn't need 30 minutes, I needed 5. Theo's computer was password protected, but he'd made the classic mistake of writing it on a sticky note hidden under his keyboard. I logged in and plugged in a USB drive loaded with software that would give me remote access to his system. While the program installed, I took photos of his office. The view from his window, the signed baseball on his desk, the expensive art on his walls. Everything that screamed success and sophistication. The same office where he'd probably made plans to meet my wife. The software finished installing, and I cleared the browser history to cover my tracks. On my way out, I grabbed a business card from Theo's desk and slipped it into my pocket. Evidence, documentation. The building blocks of a perfect revenge. That afternoon, I met Theo at the gym for basketball. He seemed relaxed, happy even, like a man without a care in the world. We played one-on-one for an hour, and he won most of the games. He always had been more athletic than me. "You seem distracted," he said as we cooled down. "Everything okay at home?" "Just work stuff," I said. "You know how it is." "I do," he said, toweling sweat from his face. "Sometimes I think we work too hard, you know? Life's short. We should make time for the things that really matter." "Like what?" I asked. "Like friendship," he said, clapping me on the shoulder. "Like family. Like making sure the people we care about know how much they mean to us." I almost laughed. Theo was giving me life advice while sleeping with my wife. The audacity was breathtaking. "You're right," I said. "We should definitely make time for the people we care about." That evening, I met Maya at a different coffee shop to compare notes. She'd been busy too, documenting Theo's movements and gathering intelligence on their affair. "I found something interesting," she said, sliding a folder across the table. "Hotel receipts going back 8 months. They've been at this longer than we thought." 8 months. Almost a year of deception, lies, and carefully orchestrated betrayal. They'd been playing the long game, taking their time, savoring every moment of fooling their spouses. "The birthday party isn't enough," I said. "They've had 8 months to enjoy this. We need to give them time to really understand what they've lost." Maya smiled, and for the first time since I'd met her, it reached her eyes. "What did you have in mind?" she asked. I told her about my visit to Theo's office, the software I'd installed, the access I now had to his digital life. I told her about my research into private investigators and surveillance equipment. I told her about the plan that had been forming in my mind since I'd seen that first photo. "We're going to take our time," I said. "We're going to be thorough. We're going to document everything, gather evidence, and build a case that destroys not just their relationship, but their entire lives. And then? Then we're going to serve it to them publicly, professionally, and personally. We're going to make sure everyone they know understands exactly what kind of people they are." Maya leaned back in her chair and studied my face. "You're not the same person who walked in here yesterday," she said. "No," I agreed. "I'm not." The next 6 weeks passed like a masterclass in surveillance and psychological warfare. Maya and I developed a routine that would have impressed the CIA. We met twice a week at different locations around the city, sharing intelligence and coordinating our efforts like generals planning a campaign. I became an expert in digital forensics. The software I'd installed on Theo's computer gave me access to his email, his calendar, his browsing history, and his private files. I watched him schedule meetings with Jenna, book hotel rooms, and send messages that would have made a romance novelist blush. Maya handled the physical surveillance. She had a talent for invisibility that served her well in restaurants and hotel lobbies. Her photo collection grew weekly. Theo and Jenna holding hands over dinner, kissing in parking garages, emerging from hotel elevators with the satisfied expressions of people who'd just spent the afternoon in bed. But we weren't just gathering evidence. We were studying our targets, learning their routines, identifying their weaknesses. Jenna's biggest vulnerability was her reputation. She'd spent years building her image as a serious professional, someone who could be trusted with million-dollar cases and high-profile clients. An affair with a married man would destroy that carefully constructed persona. Theo's weakness was his business relationships. His startup had been acquired, but he'd stayed on as CEO, and his success depended on maintaining the confidence of investors and board members. A public scandal would make him toxic in the business community. We started with small moves, anonymous tips to gossip websites about a prominent lawyer's inappropriate relationship with a married entrepreneur. Carefully planted rumors at social gatherings about suspicious behavior at local hotels. Nothing actionable, nothing they could trace back to us, but enough to create whispers. The whispers grew into conversations. Friends started asking subtle questions. Colleagues began paying closer attention to Jenna's schedule and Theo's whereabouts. The pressure was invisible but constant, like a slowly tightening noose. Meanwhile, I played the role of the oblivious husband. I attended dinner parties with Jenna, made small talk with Theo at social gatherings, and acted like everything was perfectly normal. The performance required more energy than I'd expected, but it was worth it to watch them squirm. They were getting nervous. Jenna started asking me about my day in more detail, fishing for information about whether I'd heard any rumors. Theo became overly friendly, inviting me to lunch and basketball games more frequently, like he was trying to gauge my suspicions. Their paranoia was delicious. 3 weeks before Theo's birthday party, Maya and I decided it was time to escalate. We had enough evidence to destroy them both, but we wanted to make sure the destruction was complete and public. I used my access to Theo's email to send a message to his business partner, a venture capitalist named Robert Chen, who'd invested heavily in Theo's company. The message, sent from Theo's account at 3 a.m, detailed his affair with a married lawyer and included several compromising photos. The next morning, Theo received a very uncomfortable phone call from Chen, who was concerned about potential liability issues and damage to the company's reputation. Theo managed to convince him that his email had been hacked, but the seed of doubt was planted. Maya took a more direct approach with Jenna's law firm. She created a fake email account and sent a detailed message to the managing partner, outlining Jenna's affair and suggesting it might represent a conflict of interest if any of Theo's business dealings involved the firm. The managing partner called Jenna into his office for a private conversation about professional ethics and personal conduct. Jenna came home that night pale and shaken, claiming she was coming down with something, but our masterpiece was still to come. Maya had been planning Theo's birthday party for months, and it promised to be the social event of the season. 40 guests, including business partners, colleagues, friends, and family members. A catered dinner on the terrace of their house overlooking the river. Open bar, live music, professional photography. The perfect venue for a public execution. 2 days before the party, I made my final preparations. I printed copies of the most damaging photos and documents, organizing them into folders for each guest. Hotel receipts, restaurant bills, email exchanges, location data, and Maya's surveillance photos. A complete record of the affair, professionally presented and impossible to dismiss. I also prepared a speech. Nothing too dramatic, just a simple toast that would set the stage for what was to come. I practiced it in my garage, timing it perfectly, making sure every word would land with maximum impact. Maya handled the logistics. She arranged for the photographer to be in the perfect position to capture reactions. She planned the timing to ensure maximum attendance. She even selected the music that would be playing when I stood up to speak. The night before the party, Jenna tried on 3 different dresses before settling on a black cocktail number that probably cost more than my monthly salary. She looked beautiful, confident, like a woman who had everything under control. "You're going to love this party," she said, adjusting her jewelry in the bedroom mirror. Maya really went all out. The food, the decorations, the guest list. It's going to be perfect. "I'm sure it will be," I said. "I'm really looking forward to it." That wasn't a lie. I'd been looking forward to this party for weeks. The morning of the party, I drove to a print shop across town and picked up my final order. 40 copies of a photo collage featuring the highlights of Jenna and Theo's affair, hotel entrances, restaurant tables, parking garage embraces, and bedroom scenes. A greatest hits album of betrayal, professionally mounted and ready for distribution. I spent the afternoon at home, organizing my materials and rehearsing my timing. Jenna was at the salon getting her hair done, then meeting Maya for last-minute party preparations. She wouldn't be home until it was time to leave. At 5 o'clock, I showered and put on my best suit. Navy blue, conservative, the kind of outfit that projected respectability and trustworthiness. I wanted to look like someone whose word could be believed, someone whose accusations would carry weight. Jenna came home at 6, looking stunning and excited. Her hair was perfect, her makeup flawless, her dress elegant and sophisticated. She looked like a woman ready to celebrate, not someone whose world was about to collapse. "Ready to go?" she asked, checking her appearance one last time. "Ready," I said, picking up a leather portfolio that contained everything I needed for the evening's entertainment. We drove to Maya and Theo's house in comfortable silence, Jenna humming along with the radio like she didn't have a care in the world. The house was already full of cars when we arrived, and I could hear laughter and conversation drifting from the backyard. "This is going to be such a great night," Jenna said as we walked up the front steps. "Yes," I agreed. "I think it's going to be unforgettable." Maya met us at the door, looking radiant in a silver dress that complemented her blonde hair. She hugged Jenna warmly, then turned to me with a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. "Declan," she said, taking my arm, "I'm so glad you could make it. This night means everything to me." "Wouldn't miss it," I said. "Where's the birthday boy?" "Holding court on the terrace," Maya said. "He's in his element tonight." The party was everything Maya had promised. Elegant decorations, excellent food, top-shelf liquor, and a guest list that read like a who's who of Edgewater's professional and social elite. Theo worked the crowd like a politician, shaking hands, telling stories, basking in the attention. He looked happy, successful, confident, like a man who had everything he wanted and deserved every bit of it. I mingled for an hour, making small talk with lawyers and business people, accepting compliments on my tie and asking polite questions about vacation plans and children's achievements. I was the perfect guest, charming, interested, forgettable. At 8 o'clock, Maya clinked her champagne glass to get everyone's attention. "Thank you all for being here tonight," she said, her voice carrying clearly across the terrace. "It means so much to have our closest friends here to celebrate Theo's 40th birthday." The crowd murmured appreciation, raising their glasses in Theo's direction. He beamed, clearly enjoying the spotlight. "Before we sit down for dinner," Maya continued, "I believe someone wanted to say a few words." She looked directly at me, and I felt 40 pairs of eyes follow her gaze. This was it, the moment I'd been planning for weeks. I stood up, raising my champagne glass, and smiled at the assembled crowd. "Thank you, Maya," I said. "I wanted to say something about my oldest and dearest friend, Theo Mercer." Theo grinned and raised his own glass. Several people applauded. "Theo and I have been friends for 15 years, I continued. "We've been through everything together. College, careers, marriages, all the ups and downs that come with adult life, and in all that time, Theo has taught me so many valuable lessons." The crowd was listening attentively now, expecting the usual birthday toast about friendship and shared memories. "But the most important lesson Theo taught me," I said, letting my voice carry clearly across the silent terrace, "is that some people share everything, including wives." The silence that followed was absolute. 40 people seemed to freeze at once, champagne glasses suspended halfway to their lips, conversations cutting off mid-sentence. Theo's face went white, then red, then white again. Jenna dropped her glass, and it shattered on the flagstone terrace with a sound like a gunshot. "So here's to my best friend," I continued, still smiling, still holding my glass high, "who taught me that trust is just another word for opportunity, and that the people closest to you are often the ones with the sharpest knives." I drained my champagne in one gulp, set the glass on the nearest table, and opened my leather portfolio. I thought you might all enjoy seeing some photos from Theo's recent adventures, I said, pulling out the first stack of prints. Maya, would you mind helping me distribute these? Maya moved through the crowd like a woman possessed, placing photo collages on every table, handing copies to every guest. People stared at the images in shock, their faces registering recognition, disgust, and fascination in equal measure. Jenna tried to run, but Maya's photographer was blocking the exit, capturing every moment of her humiliation. Theo stood frozen in the center of the terrace, surrounded by friends and colleagues who were now studying documentation of his affair with his best friend's wife. The hotel receipts are particularly interesting, I announced to the crowd. 8 months of Tuesday and Thursday afternoon meetings, very consistent schedule for a business relationship. Someone in the crowd gasped. Someone else whispered a curse. The photographer's camera clicked steadily, documenting the destruction of 2 reputations in real time. I want to thank you all for coming tonight, I said, closing my portfolio and straightening my tie. I hope you've enjoyed the party as much as I have. Maya, thank you for being such a gracious host. This has been everything I hoped it would be. I walked through the crowd toward the exit, and people stepped aside like I was carrying a contagious disease. At the door, I turned back for one final look. Theo was sitting in a chair, his head in his hands, while guests filed past him with expressions of disgust and disappointment. Jenna was crying in a corner, surrounded by women who had been her friends an hour earlier and were now treating her like a social pariah. Maya caught my eye and nodded once. Mission accomplished. I drove home alone, leaving Jenna to find her own way back from the ruins of her social life. The house felt different when I walked in, like the air had been cleared of something toxic. My phone was already buzzing with calls and text messages. Word of the party was spreading through Edgewater's social networks like wildfire. By morning, everyone in town would know about Jenna and Theo's affair. But I wasn't finished yet. The party had been the opening act. The real show was just beginning. The aftermath of Theo's birthday party exceeded even my most optimistic expectations. By Sunday morning, the story had spread through Edgewater's social media networks like a digital wildfire. Someone had posted the photos online, and within hours they'd been shared hundreds of times across Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Jenna didn't come home Saturday night. I assumed she was staying with a friend, though I suspected her options were limited given how quickly word was spreading. Maya texted me Sunday afternoon to let me know that Theo had locked himself in his home office and wasn't answering calls. Monday morning brought the professional consequences we'd been hoping for. Jenna's law firm placed her on administrative leave pending an investigation into her conduct. The managing partner, a stuffy traditionalist named Harrison Webb, had built his practice on reputation and respectability. Having a partner involved in a public adultery scandal was exactly the kind of publicity he couldn't tolerate. Theo's situation was even worse. His business partner, Robert Chen, called an emergency board meeting to discuss leadership issues and reputation management. The company's investors were concerned about the negative publicity and its potential impact on upcoming deals. But Maya and I weren't content to let professional consequences handle our revenge. We'd spent too much time planning this campaign to leave the endgame to other people. Tuesday morning, I filed for divorce. My lawyer, a sharp woman named Patricia Reeves, who specialized in high-conflict cases, had been preparing the paperwork for weeks. We had documentation of Jenna's affair, evidence of her deception, and a timeline that would make her attempts to claim innocence laughable. Maya filed the same day. Her lawyer was even more aggressive than mine, and he'd prepared a case that would leave Theo financially devastated. Maya had been smart about protecting her assets, and she had enough evidence of Theo's misconduct to ensure a favorable settlement. Wednesday brought the first attempts at damage control. Theo called me 6 times before I finally answered. "Dec, we need to talk," he said, his voice strained and desperate. "This whole thing has gotten out of hand. Let me explain what really happened." "What really happened," I said, "is that you spent 8 months sleeping with my wife while pretending to be my friend. I think that's pretty clear?" "It wasn't like that," he said. It happened. We didn't plan it. It was a mistake, a moment of weakness that got out of control." 8 months of moments of weakness, I said. "That's impressive, even for you." "Please," he said, "can we meet somewhere? Just the 2 of us? I need to make this right." "There's nothing to make right," I said. "You made your choices. Now you get to live with the consequences." I hung up and blocked his number. Jenna's approach was different. She came home Wednesday evening, looking haggard and defeated. Her perfect hair was unwashed, her designer clothes wrinkled, her makeup smeared from crying. "We need to talk," she said, setting her purse on the kitchen counter like she still lived there. "No," I said, not looking up from my laptop. We need to get divorced. Everything else is just noise. Declan, please, she said, sitting across from me at the kitchen table. I know you're angry, and you have every right to be. What I did was wrong, and I'm sorry. But we can work through this. We can go to counseling, rebuild our trust, start over. I closed my laptop and looked at her for the first time since she'd walked in. She looked smaller somehow, diminished by the weight of public humiliation and professional disgrace. Start over? I said. You spent 8 months lying to my face while sleeping with my best friend. You booked hotel rooms on our credit card and told me you were working late. You looked me in the eye every morning and pretended to be the woman I married. And now you want to start over? It was a mistake, she said. A terrible mistake that I regret every day, but it's over now. Theo and I, we're not seeing each other anymore. It meant nothing. It meant nothing, I laughed. 8 months of nothing? Hotel receipts for nothing? Love letters about nothing? You must have really enjoyed all that nothing. She started crying then, the kind of desperate tears that come when someone realizes they've lost everything that matters. But I felt no sympathy for her. She'd made her choices with full knowledge of the consequences. I've filed for divorce, I said. My lawyer will be in touch with yours about the details. I suggest you find somewhere else to stay while we work out the arrangements. This is my house too, she said. Actually, I said, opening my laptop and pulling up a legal document. It's not. I've been doing some research into property law, and it turns out that when you use marital assets to fund an extramarital affair, it can affect your claim to community property. My lawyer thinks we have a strong case for keeping the house. She stared at me like she was seeing me for the first time. You're not the same person I married, she said. No, I agreed. I'm not. The person you married was naive enough to trust you. The person you're talking to now knows exactly what you're capable of. She left that night and didn't come back. Thursday brought more professional consequences. Jenna's suspension became a termination when the managing partner decided that her conduct had irreparably damaged the firm's reputation. Theo's board meeting resulted in his removal as CEO, though he retained some equity in the company. Maya and I met Friday afternoon to assess our progress. We chose a restaurant across town where we were unlikely to encounter anyone from our social circle. How are you holding up? She asked over coffee. Better than expected, I said. I thought I'd feel guilty about destroying their lives, but mostly I just feel satisfied. I know what you mean, she said. I keep waiting for remorse to kick in, but it hasn't happened yet. We compared notes on the week's developments. Jenna was staying with her sister in the suburbs and looking for a new job. Theo had moved into a hotel while Maya prepared to take possession of their house. Both of them were facing financial ruin and social ostracism. Do you think we went too far? Maya asked. I considered the question while watching traffic pass outside the restaurant window. They had 8 months to enjoy their affair, I said. They had 8 months to plan their deception, to savor their betrayal, to laugh about how clever they were. I think they can handle a few months of consequences. What happens now? She asked. Now we move on, I said. We rebuild our lives without them. We find new friends, new relationships, new reasons to be happy, and we never look back. Maya smiled, and I realized it was the first genuine smile I'd seen from her since this whole thing started. I like that plan, she said. Saturday morning brought an unexpected visitor. I was working in my garage when a car pulled into the driveway. Maya got out, carrying a bottle of champagne and wearing the first casual clothes I'd ever seen her in. Thought we should celebrate, she said, holding up the bottle. What are we celebrating? I asked. Freedom, she said. Justice. The fact that we're both better off without them. We sat in my backyard and drank champagne while the sun set over Edgewater. Maya told me about her plans to travel, to start a business, to do all the things she'd put on hold during her marriage to Theo. I told her about my own plans, the possibilities that seemed to be opening up now that I wasn't living a lie. Do you regret it? She asked as we finished the bottle. Which part? I said. Any of it. All of it. The investigation, the party, the public humiliation. Do you wish we'd handled it differently? I thought about Jenna and Theo, probably sitting in separate locations, contemplating the ruins of their lives. I thought about the friends they'd lost, the careers they'd destroyed, the reputations they'd never recover. No, I said. I don't regret any of it. They made their choices, and we made ours. The only difference is that our choices were honest. Maya nodded and raised her empty champagne flute in a mock toast. To honest choices, she said. To honest choices, I agreed. Sunday evening, I was cleaning out closets when I found a box of photos from happier times. pictures of Jenna and me on our honeymoon, at dinner parties with friends, celebrating anniversaries and birthdays. In many of the photos, Theo was there too, smiling and laughing like the loyal friend I thought he was. I looked at those images for a long time, trying to remember what it felt like to be the person in those pictures. The trusting husband, the loyal friend, the man who believed in the goodness of people he loved. That person was gone now, replaced by someone harder and more calculating. Someone who understood that trust was a luxury he couldn't afford, that loyalty was a weakness that others would exploit. I wasn't sure if that transformation was a good thing or a bad thing, but it was permanent. I threw the photos in the trash and went back to cleaning house. Monday brought the final chapter of our revenge story. Jenna's divorce attorney called to discuss settlement terms. She was prepared to accept my conditions without a fight, which included giving up any claim to the house, the cars, or my retirement accounts. She just wanted the process to be over quickly and quietly. Theo's situation was more complicated. Maya's lawyer had uncovered evidence of financial misconduct related to his affair, including the use of company funds for personal expenses. The board was considering legal action, and his divorce settlement would leave him with almost nothing. By Tuesday afternoon, both divorces were filed and moving through the court system. Maya and I were legally free of our cheating spouses, and our revenge was complete. That evening, I drove to Bean's bar for the first time since this whole thing started. The owner nodded when I walked in, like no time had passed at all. "Whiskey?" he asked. "The good stuff this time," I said. He poured 2 fingers of single malt and set it in front of me. The bar was busier than usual, filled with people I recognized from around town. Several of them nodded in my direction, and I could see the recognition in their eyes. I was no longer the invisible IT guy whose wife was cheating on him. I was the man who'd orchestrated one of the most spectacular public humiliations in Edgewater's recent history. My phone buzzed with a text from Maya. "Drinks tomorrow? I have news." I typed back, "Good news or bad news?" "The best kind," she replied. "The kind that proves we made the right choice." I finished my whiskey and drove home to a house that finally felt like mine again. The air was cleaner somehow, free of the lies and deception that had poisoned it for months. I'd lost a wife and a best friend, but I'd gained something more valuable, the knowledge that I was capable of fighting back, that I didn't have to accept betrayal quietly or forgive people who didn't deserve forgiveness. Some people might call what Maya and I did cruel or excessive. They might argue that we should have taken the high road, handled our divorces privately, allowed Jenna and Theo to maintain some dignity. Those people had never been betrayed by someone they trusted completely. I had no regrets about our campaign of revenge. Jenna and Theo had chosen to destroy our marriages for their own selfish pleasure. Maya and I had simply chosen to make sure they understood the full cost of their decisions. Justice isn't always pretty, but it's always necessary, and sometimes, if you're very careful and very thorough, it can be absolutely perfect.